Get started. Welcome, everyone, and Happy New Year. Welcome to our first Workplace Alliance virtual lunch and learn of the year. I'm Ryan Wilson. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm the Director of Corporate Relations for the Greater Houston LGBTQ plus Chamber of Commerce. And we're really excited to have a conversation today about civic engagement and how to build an election-ready workplace ahead of the 2026 primaries that are coming up in Texas this March. So this conversation will sort of be Texas-ish specific, although I think all the lessons about how to engage folks can apply anywhere in the United States, not just in Texas. There will be primaries throughout the year if you're located in another state. But for us here in Houston and across Texas, we do have primaries in March. So this is a timely conversation to be having here at the beginning, or yeah, at the end of uh, January, but the beginning of the year. Um, I want to also acknowledge that my colleague Maureen Mayori, who's our Director of Operations, is helping manage today. So if you have any questions throughout the program, feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll do some Q&A at the end. And today's session is being recorded, so we will have it available on our YouTube channel, where you can find all our past virtual lunch and learns as well. We're very excited that the Chamber is celebrating our 10-year anniversary this year. So we have a lot of special things happening throughout the year that you won't want to miss as we celebrate 10 years of impact around Houston and beyond. If you're not familiar with the Chamber, we are the organization here in Houston that is sort of focused at the intersection of the business community and the LGBT community. And we really are focused on economic empowerment and growing everyone's ability to thrive and survive in the US and beyond. Um, this program is part of the larger LGBTQ Workplace Alliance program that we offer specifically for our impact partners. Those are companies with employees roughly around 500 or more who have LGBT inclusion programming throughout their company. We try to create opportunities to share best practices, to offer additional inclusion programming like our Lunch and Learn series, and we do networking events throughout the year. So when you check out our chamber calendar, we'll have a lot of events throughout the year that are open to all chamber members, but there are certain ones that are reserved exclusively for our impact partners as part of their benefits for being investing in our chamber at a larger level. Coming up, uh, actually tonight, we have the Chamber Night and then the Next Gen Night out at the Houston Rockets, one of our impact partners and sports partners. We work with them on Pride Night at the Rockets, but tonight we're doing a special night out with our young professionals group and with other chamber members. So, not too late to get tickets and join us at the Rockets this evening. Tomorrow, we will be partnering with the British American Business Council to do a happy hour at St. Arnold Brewing Company, another chamber member. And this will be a good opportunity to network with their members and our chamber members. And uh, coming up at the end of the month, we have our very exciting Thrive Business Summit and Matchmaker. If you are an ERG leader, we are encouraging ERG leaders to sign up for the matchmaker so that we can pair you with some of the chamber members who do offer both good services, catering, and other things that might be of benefit to you as an ERG leader. And then also, if you have a supplier diversity or supplier access person in your company, we encourage them to sign up for the matchmaker as well. If you're a small business owner who are joining us today for this conversation, we also encourage you to sign up for the Thrive Summit to attend the programming and learn more about what um, business leaders might need to know. It's our Thrive is our professional event for our small and medium-sized business leaders, and really a great opportunity to grow and network. Coming up in the community on February 7th and 8th, there is a community summit co-sponsored by a ton of organizations from across Houston and the greater Houston region. It's going to be hosted at the Montrose Center. The Chamber is a proud partner to be organizing this two-day event. We encourage folks to check it out through our chamber website. There's a way to sign up. There's over 300 people already pre-registered for this event, so it's going to be a major gathering of LGBT community members, and a good opportunity to learn and grow and network. And then also, we're encouraging our ERG leaders to sign up for our leadership roundtable. This one is exclusively for folks who are in a leadership role in a business or employee resource group as an opportunity to network and best practice share. And we're really excited this coming February 12th. The meeting will be hosted by our chamber member Kroger, which will be talking about working with folks who don't sit at a desk every day, who don't work a traditional 9 to 5, who may be stationed at different locations all around a market. How do you still create belonging and inclusion at companies that do retail work like that? So it's a really interesting conversation we want to have across chamber members. So we encourage you to sign up and join us for that if you're in a leadership role. And then on March 8th, the Chamber is partnering to help support Allies in Hope and some of their benefiting members by raising awareness and walking to end HIV. And we, as a chamber, will have a team. If you don't have a team to march with, we encourage you to sign up and join ours. But we also encourage your companies and ERGs to sign up and create your own teams and help raise money for a good cause, raise visibility. And this is a really intersectional issue that it cuts across every type of gender, race, and identity. So we really encourage folks to reach out beyond their Pride ERGs to partner with the other ERGs within your company to create a team and march on March 8th. That's a Sunday in the morning. We will be there, vendor space for the chamber, and we'll be helping cut the ribbon again this year, as we did last year, pictured there. All right, that's all of our chamber updates. And now for the business at hand. Why are we here? Why are we talking about creating an election-ready workplace? So I really am excited to bring on Marjorie and Deidre, who are part of the In Good Company Institute. Um, Thank you both for joining us today. We're excited to have a conversation with y'all. So I'm going to stop sharing my slides and let y'all put up yours. And then I was going to just sort of tell you all here on the call why, the chamber cares about elections. We're not a partisan organization. We're not an election organization. We don't do endorsements, but we do believe that elections are really important. Um, at the chamber, we realize that things happen to us that are part of and influenced by politics. Just like last year, at the beginning of the year, there was a new administration that took over, and the first thing the president did was ban all diversity, equity, inclusion across the federal government. And one of the repercussions of that was that the Federal Reserve had to tell the chamber 2 days before an event that they couldn't host us anymore. This was an economic event that we had pre-scheduled to have with them. We were going to talk about business and the economy, which is right along the Federal Reserve's guidelines and goals, but because of the changes in political administrations, we were suddenly finding ourselves without the opportunity to host an event there. So that's just one example of how, at least from our perspective, who's in charge at the state, local, and federal level has direct impact on our businesses and our community's ability to thrive and coordinate some of our business goals. So whether you pay attention to politics every day, whether you tune it all out because it could be a lot. We really want folks to sort of think about what impacts businesses can have in creating more capacity and space for your employees to get engaged civically and participate in the right to vote. So, Marjorie, Deidre, take it away. I'm going to stop rambling
All
now.
right. Well, and we'll kind of introduce ourselves and our backgrounds as we go. But before I kick it off, I want to also frame something that we're seeing as a really important part of why elections and why civics. And, this also has to do with the learning that we're trying to help organizations have around politics doesn't have to be binary in the way that we're looking at it, meaning it's a Republican or a Democrat equals one thing or the other. It's really more about across the board representation and what are the issues and what are the priorities of communities at large. And that's where participation and people's understanding of them really play into how things work and are really the heart of what we're trying to do. By way of background, I'm Marjorie Clifton. I'm chairman of the board of IGC. And Deirdre and I actually met in Houston in high school a million years ago, but reconnected in Austin when we were both doing work with building business coalitions around fair election laws and doing work in this space. And we were coming at it from two very different lenses. I was a consultant, am a consultant, have been for 30 years. I was also a media personality on all the major cable news networks for 15 years. And really, I worked at the intersection of business coalitions and helping businesses address this question of their brands and politics. And what I started seeing happen, and a lot of times that was to move policy agendas that we saw being helpful in the business community at large. I mean, well, anyway, so I could go on all day about that. But what happened was about 5 years ago, I started to see all of the calls I was getting from major companies was really crisis. And it wasn't really the typical crisis, malware or a fire at a factory. It was, oh my God, an employee tweeted something, or oh my goodness, this, CEO made a statement and about his own personal politics, and now it's impacting our workplace. And at the heart of that really came what we've now are creating with IGC, which was really a lack of people understanding how the system worked and how to engage with it, and companies not knowing what role are we supposed to play. So that's kind of how I've come to this, and I'm going to let Deirdre tell a little bit about her background.
Sure. Thanks, Marjorie. I appreciate it. So nice to meet everyone. I'm very excited on this particular call. I was chair of your sister chamber in Austin for a number of years, and am really excited and happy to be here. So a little bit about how I came to this work. I was the head of marketing and communications for a $1 billion semiconductor company here in Texas. And thought the company was doing great. We had really strong values, really strong revenue growth. And then in 2016, political tension entered our workforce sort of unintentionally. So the then CEO, the day after the election, sent an email out to all employees saying, despite the results of the election, we are a company that believes in skilled immigration and free trade and equality. And never in my, 20-year career and doing this kind of work had I seen such polarizing responses from not only employees, but questions from the board, questions from the media. And really, what's started off as a crisis, as Marjorie mentioned, really turned into an opportunity. So we saw it very early on, the ability to reframe civics in a way that it becomes part of our corporate culture. And so we started offering nonpartisan civics education, nonpartisan civics programming, and really we saw better business outcomes because of that. So we saw our trust go up. We saw our brand score improve. We started getting rewards like great places to work. And so when Marjorie and I came together, sorry, you can go to the next slide.
Sorry, I went a little haywire on the slides for a second
Oh,
there,
it's
just making sure everyone's
okay.
paying attention.
uh, Marjorie and I came together and we really realized when we started talking through this that we were seeing the same thing from different lenses, right? And that every leader we were talking to was facing similar challenges where employee expectations were higher. They were operating in this complex economic, political, social environment. And really, the margin for error felt smaller. Do I speak up? Do I stay silent? What do I do in these situations? And the results, not only from our own experience, but from data, was just showing these were having real business issues. Turnover was rising, innovation was slowing, the cost of capital, because of the way the government was functioning, the cost of capital was increasing. So we knew that we had to come up with a solution. And uh, I'm sure many of you today feel these challenges. So, by show of little virtual hand, how many, and sorry, can you go back one, Marjorie?
Yeah, sure.
Just raise your virtual hand if you can. How many of you have had like your Slack channel or text message blow up when news about Venezuela or Greenland or some sort of headline happen, right? Probably several. Yeah, there we go. Um, how many of you have been in an awkward meeting where someone makes a comment and then all of a sudden the meeting takes like a weird turn because there's tension? Yeah, lots of us. That one's like the most under like the probably the most common. And then talking to my peers in HR, these misunderstandings consume a lot of HR time and are super distracting. So knowing the challenges businesses and leaders were facing and the pressure and response employees were experiencing, we came up with a solution that we had seen proven work at the semiconductor company of making civics part of your culture, your community service, and your CSR efforts.
And one of the things I will also reiterate with this is like in my capacity, a lot of the work I was doing over 20 years was watching the evolution of how companies started talking about these things in the framework of culture. So it was community service, it was CSR, then it was DEI, and it was all these different things that basically signaled ways that we work with our teams to engage in the community. And that was really the heart of what all these different things are. What is the role of a company and a culture out in the world and in our little world? And so as we've seen, DEI now be the target of the day, and CSR had its moment, and it still exists in some circles. What we really, our premise was that actually organizations are already doing essentially what the heart of civics is, which is about engaging in communities. They're investing in corporate giving, they're doing volunteer work. And so what we see is that civics is really just an extension of that. It's actually how you make sure the money that you're giving, the volunteering that you're doing connects with the policies and spaces that people are interacting with out in the world. And so much of what we're focusing on is just our rights and duties of citizens, the ways we volunteer, the way we pay taxes, the way we understand systems. And I also, by the way, like to nerd out on the fact that like American schools were actually founded to teach civics. That's actually where schools began in the US. And we've moved completely away from that to where are the spaces that we get that. You could also say that in terms of that was where they were learning, where people learned values and how to engage in their communities. And now we find other community orgs and churches filling that gap. So a lot of this is organizations trying to figure out how do we fill gaps of things that have disappeared, but really were the origin story of how our communities, our societies, and our employees work. The good news for companies is that 7 in 10 employees already want their workplaces to offer nonpartisan civics information. They're looking to their employers for it. And as Deirdre highlighted, not only was it 53% engagement of engineers that they saw, but they actually saw that internationally. They saw people even outside of the US coming and wanting to understand how our country is operating and working. And the other was she saw people bring their friends and their family members and all kinds of people into these workplace learning opportunities because people truly were hungry. And the other is we see that it also is beneficial to companies, and that because 81% of Americans want to buy from companies that encourage civic engagement and civic life. So these are all positives and great news. The other is, and this is really kind of where, again, our origin story started, is a lot of what I was dealing with in media, where we were seeing people's trust in media decline at rapid fire. And I was dealing with political entities and law enforcement entities and government entities who no one trusted anymore. And what we realized is that actually people's employers, according to the Edelman Trust Index, are actually the most trusted institution in their lives. So where we work and who we work for is actually a great place for me to go and get information that I trust. Um,
Sure. And so, yeah, and I think with that, I want to highlight two ways that the civic understanding and knowledge is really important to two different communities that everybody on this call cares about. And the first is this matters to our state, right? Being able to understand and participate in our civic life in a state that is growing. We have more people moving here than any other state. Prosperous, right? Still have the eighth largest economy in the world, and yet our voter turnout is abysmal, right? And so, um, sorry, Marjorie, we go
I'm
back.
sorry, keep going.
No, it's okay. And this work, the reason why it's so important for organizations and workplaces is that the policy that our state officials dictate impact our companies, right? They impact workforce development, they impact our education pipeline, our healthcare, our taxes, you name it. It impacts areas of the company that we really care about. And when we have low voter turnout, that means a very small group of Texans not only pick our leaders, but pick what priorities are important to our state. And so that's the first piece. The second is also it's important to everybody on this call is LGBTQ inclusive employers. So we've seen that DEI has gotten politicized. ERGs, I know firsthand in my last few years, were already under-supported, and now many of them are even questioned or under attack. And then political retaliation, if you are an LGBTQ inclusive workplace, is real. So by offering nonpartisan civics education, you're able to support this community without putting a target on your organization's back. And so I'm gonna nerd. So I'm a nerd. I've worked in tech. I'm a data junkie. I look at data all the time, as everyone on my team can attend to. And so we're gonna dive a little bit into the data and the numbers if you just don't think our stories are compelling enough. So one of the things is you can't participate in what you don't understand. So, as Marjorie mentioned, our school system started off in order to tell Americans what their rights and duties were as a citizen. Yet today, only 4 states still require 1 year of civics education. And then, because of this limited education, we get data like over half the country can't name the 3 branches of government. And 80% of Americans feel like politicians don't care what people like them think. And so it's no surprise that then, uh,
Sorry.
sorry, there was something, sorry, our slides got a little wackadoo. So then it's no surprise that we have such low voter turnout. And so one of the things that we're going to ask you today is to do something. You don't have to do everything. We're going to give you some really simple steps, but we think with your trust and your voice in the community, um, we want to empower you not to tell your people what to think or what to do, but help them to understand and participate in a way that aligns with your organization's communication strategy and unique culture. And so I'm going to give you some examples of organizations we've worked with and some of the cool things that they've done. So the first one, Dell. So Dell has done an amazing job I think over a decade, doing a multi-year company-wide nonpartisan civics education and engagement program. So they focus on how do we inform and educate our workforce, not how do we take stances or how do we endorse candidates or how do we get our employees to advocate for or against policy. They do simple communications, really well thought out events, have clear guidelines for how to engage in these activities, and all of the effort is supported by HR and corporate affairs. And so the reason this works is because Dell keeps the program steady and predictable. Employees know it's coming, they get trusted information, and it's very low lift. It's, hey, go check and see if your voter registration is still activated during your lunch break. The second story I want to highlight is around Bumble. So I think Bumble does a really great job at meeting users where they are. So they offer nonpartisan information on voting, on upcoming elections, key dates, both within the Bumble app as well as on social media. And then they invite their users and their employees to share with their own networks. And they have really fun events like Civic Bingo that we got to lead last year. And the reason why this all works is because it's so closely aligned to the brand, the tone, and the experiences that Bumble fans are already used to. So it doesn't feel out of context. And then the third story I want to highlight is around Old Navy. So, Old Navy had a really interesting challenge where they realized a lot of their shift workers weren't voting because they weren't paid to get that time off. The voting windows, especially in a place like Texas, were very narrow. So they spent time and came up with not only a paid time off to vote policy, but also a paid time off to serve as a poll worker. And then they paired that with training, not only for their employees, but also for their managers of how to run this at the store level and how to talk about elections in a nonpartisan way. And what they ended up getting was not only a lot of employees engaged in out voting, but they also were really proud in sharing their stories. And that built a better relationship with company leadership.
So why does it matter on the primaries and in particular the voter information gap? I mean, one of the things I will tell you is, I was in DC for 10 years, and again, part of that media that was talking about issues like they were everybody else's daily issues because that was all I was looking at and thinking about, and same with most people in politics. About a few months ago, I was out with a friend of mine who actually runs investor relations for an oil and gas company based in Houston. We've known each other since we were kids, and I was talking all about like the March primary and all this stuff. And he's like, Marjorie, no offense, but no one knows what you're talking about. Wait, can I vote in the primary? Like, when is the primary? And I almost lost my mind because I'm like, you literally are talking about policy all the time and you don't even know that there's a primary. And it was a real wake up call, honestly. And this is someone I hold very close to me. I'm like, dude, you've got an MBA and you don't even know there's a primary. And so this is not going back to sort of the fact that we do not teach civics in school and it's not part of everybody's daily acumen. And so much of what we see in the civic education we're doing in companies at large is helping them be able to connect these issues to things in their daily life, things that are happening in their companies, or things like tariffs and other policy related issues that all of a sudden change the course of business for them. And that's one of the things that we're really excited about. So the primaries in particular have become a focus of ours. Because we feel they are one of the most misunderstood or understood things in politics, not just in Texas, but everywhere. But it's especially bad in Texas. And so, what we're doing right now is a focus on this voter turnout issue and voter education issue. So, we've highlighted we're the eighth largest economy in the world. We're gaining the most residents in the country right now. But we also have the second lowest voter turnout in the country. And what we see is a low voter turnout in the general election, but in the primary, even worse. We have basically between 10 and 14% of Texans who show up in primaries and largely are determining who runs our state. And this is what part of what we're trying to help people understand is how a primary actually works, how it functions. We liken it to March Madness, and in a town that's focused on the Rockets, who I was a big fan of, you all should be paying attention and understand. You're making your picks, and really your picks determine who ends up in the playoffs. And that's kind of how the primaries also work. And in states like Texas, 27 of the 27 statewide seats, 146 of the 150 legislative seats in the state have been decided in the March primary since 1998. And I just give everyone a minute to take that in. So we show up for the general election and we're basically arguing over 4 seats that are flippable. Everyone else has decided in the primary. And this kind of goes back to this nuance around, people assign it to one party or the other, but really it is about which Democrat, which Republican, who are the leaders that we are deciding that go into office and make those decisions. And the other piece of this becomes that when you do have a really small group of people who all the energy goes into, and those are people who we know historically have voted in primaries before, what happens is you start tailoring policy only to that small group because you're only accountable to that small group. They're the ones that decide whether you stay in office. And so the more we expand who's voting, the more we also expand the priorities. We expand accountability. So it has this sort of broader effect. And the other challenge with our current primary voter profile is so, in addition to having voted in typically at least 4 primaries, is that those are people who self-identify as extremes of their party. And they are people who are typically older Texans. And so they're not representative of the population when you look at it, especially of cities like Houston. Why we are focused on this. So what we've done is we basically have a campaign we're running through IGC, through In Good Company, called March Matters. And March Matters was actually conceived by a lot of business associations. It was conceived out of people who were operating at Texas 2036 and the Texas Association of Business. The reason, same stated reason, people are just not aware. They do not get information about the primaries. If you haven't voted in a primary, you probably aren't hearing anything about it happening at all in your mailbox, in your text messages, in your inbox. So what we're doing is focusing on empowering the messengers we know are trusted, which are employers, which are associations, which are community organizations, and we're giving them a toolkit to be able to educate their people. So first awareness, second education. And we actually have a website. It's marchmatters.org if you check it out. And that is where our partners can register and be able to get a toolkit that allows them to be able to be part of this collective group of organizations. So knowing they're not alone in the work that they're doing. The other is we're able to really measure the impact we're having. Where are people engaging? Where are they wanting to get information? Who are they getting it from? And the goal is also to give people the tools that are really easy to implement in their current communication plans. So to put out in their intranet, we have email heroes or a flyer or a poster or whatever makes sense. So it looks like these kinds of things. This is an example of what the toolkit gives you, and where right now we branded this for the LGBTQ chamber, and used an image that could be supplied by the chamber. And we added what March matters to. It matters to LGBTQ equality. The same idea and the same kind of thing can be done for any business. So if you're a business operating in Texas and have employees in Texas, you could basically use your logo, use your message, use your image in our toolkit and share it with your community. And then we're able to track the data and assign it back to your organization to say, good news, you had X number of people engage with the website. And you'll see on the website, again, very nonpartisan, been aggressively vetted by attorneys and other corporations as well, to make sure that the information we're sharing also leans on language and research we have that shows which words that you use in talking to people that don't signal partisanship, don't signal party. And a lot of what we're sharing is also just key dates for checking registration, key dates for early voting, information such as we just learned that the Postmaster General will not certify day of ballots that are turned into mail. So needing to make sure that any ballots that are dropped off by mail need to be hand stamped. They need to be sent early, and these are things that are changing real time. Um,
Yeah,
but we,
yeah, can I add something there
yeah,
to
sure.
Marguerite? Yeah,
Of course.
so just want to, can you back up just one quick slide?
Hmm.
So, having been a practitioner, I know firsthand that oftentimes you either have an idea like, yeah, it would be cool to, post the election dates in our break room, or maybe you're an executive and you hand it to your practitioner and say, hey, post the election dates in our break rooms. All of that took so much time and effort. We basically created a toolkit that is as copy and paste for the practitioner as possible. So align with your brand, align with your brand colors, copy and paste content. And then we're going to be sending out email reminders just for the 6 weeks leading up to the Texas primary on here are key things that happened last week. So, like Marjorie mentioned, news about the changes in the mail. To hey, did you know there's a special election on January 31st? So kind of upcoming past things, upcoming things, and basically to keep you informed and in the know in a really easy way on something that, it can be really complex. So both for your own knowledge and preparation for engagement in the primaries, but also as a trusted leader, the resources that you can share with your network, either, at work or on your LinkedIn or wherever you feel the most sort of ownership and value of sharing that content.
Yeah, and I want to, oh, and Ryan, I see you've got a question real quick.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in and sort of validate, as someone who has worked around the movement and has literally gone knocking door to door with folks and sort of helped educate voters. Sometimes voters have their habit or their process or their system, but then from year to year, the law changes about when and what dates. And so, like, maybe you always voted on a Sunday afternoon during early voting, but this year the polling location's different than you've always gone. Or so it's, not for lack of trying from some of these well-meaning voters, that it's just there's confusion baked into the system that almost is intentional sometimes, and other times it's just a result of from year to year there's different changes in procedures. So this is really helpful information just for the average person who doesn't eat, sleep, and drink this stuff on a daily basis, to really help empower them. So I really appreciate you all sharing this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to throw in the chat too. We have a page that I encourage everybody on this call, even if you don't share anything, even if you're not like an evangelist, just how you can get prepared yourself. And the steps you need to take, any of the new rules and regulations. So I just threw it up there, but that's the prepare for the primaries page. And then I went ahead and on the QR code that Marjorie shared, that is actually a custom link for your chamber and members to be able to access the toolkit. So I like a little friendly competition, and I'm just saying. I just contacted the Austin LGBT Chamber too, and said like, how many organizations do you think you can get to access and share their information? So we can start to see. No, I'm just kidding. But it is something that you guys have access to. That's your unique QR code, and then those are the key dates. Once you go to that prepare site that I put in the chat. We've built it again to make it as easy as possible. You can download an iCal and all of the key dates are going to show up on your calendar because unless it's on my calendar, it doesn't exist for me. And so things like that, we're really trying to solve for busy professionals who want the information, want to engage, just need a little bit more support and help.
And for your comms departments, and also just for organizations that are kind of just putting their toes in the water for this kind of thing. I mean, this is true of any of the materials we have through In Good Company and IGC, which is work we're doing year round. And then March Matters, which obviously is just around this period of time. We know that every organization operates differently internally. Different people are the ones that approve information, different people distributing it. We know in some cases it's ERGs that are the distributors. We know others that are wanting to do this kind of thing on their intranet, so with employees. And then we have others that are looking to do it externally to customers and to employees. So we make this so that it can be used in whatever way fits your organization. We want to make it easier, not harder. And the other thing I will say is even just one posting or one email, it matters because people do, the vacuum of information and the desire that people have to understand and feel like there is something they can be doing to feel empowered, to feel like they've got a way to participate is really profound. And we just keep hearing that over and over and over again. And I'll let Deirdre speak also to just within IGC, kind of how that delivery looks in our larger materials, not just March Matters.
And I want to be super clear because I don't want this to come across as a sales pitch in any
Yeah.
way. The resources we're trying to promote are just things that we feel like every business leader should have the understanding and access to in a way that makes the most sense for them. And
Mhm.
so, in addition to the March Matters stuff that we shared, pretty soon we're going to be doing a similar informational campaign on primaries for all 50 states. And then we have for the national employers, we're rolling out, we already have tools and trainings for executives, for employee resource group leaders. And then very shortly in the next few weeks, we're going to have custom training for comms and HR. And then eventually we'll have it for government affairs because I understand that every one of these groups is coming from a different point of view, has a different need. And so we're again trying to meet you where you are in your company or organization to be a valuable resource. And really, we see this as the best way to not only improve outcomes in our systems and make sure that we all feel proud of our elected officials, but it also is the best way that we feel like risk is getting reduced in organizations. And everything we do really is truly nonpartisan, informational. We're trying to talk to you like real people and not overly complicated on the, civic side or nobody has time to take a civics class, but we do feel like giving it to you in business terms and things that relate to your day-to-day life, whether that's, the rising price of groceries or why is your employer's healthcare changing or whatever those things are, is the way to get more people engaged. Because when we have more people engaged, we're firm believers that our communities are better, our state is better, and ultimately our country and the world are better. And so if there's anything that we can ever do, we're here. And then this is just a summary, right? It's here, it's in your workplace, it's challenging. Marjorie and I know firsthand how challenging politics can be when you're a leader inside of an organization and when your employees are fighting or your Slack channels blowing up with news headlines. And adding nonpartisan civics to your culture, to your community is especially important for companies based here and then anybody in our space in any LGBTQ inclusive business. And we are a fairly new nonprofit and we're here. Like, tell us what you need. Marjorie and I have, probably half a century between the two of us of
Ugh.
experience working in this space and with really large brands and organizations. So we are here to support you guys.
Yeah, and one other thing I wanted to offer. So again, we're a nonprofit. So we have free tools and things that you can start engaging with. And what we find is that as organizations find ways to integrate this, it expands over time. So like whatever, if it's helpful for us to even come in, especially for businesses in Texas, we're accustomed to coming in and also speaking and helping those ERGs onboard this work. But the other is, I have companies all the time ask me basically, like, what's the preventative medicine? Like, what's the thing I can do to keep us out of trouble? And the unfortunate thing is, most companies, what they do is they default to, we're going to do less, say less, and get real quiet and just hope nobody notices us in the room. And the problem in our current world is that that's not the way the world works because every employee has one of these and basically can become their own little media shop and out of their basement or their office or whatever. And it's the organizations I see drug into the spotlight were not prepared because they didn't think they were doing anything that was a problem. And we have found that organizations that have really put the time and work into integrating this into their ongoing culture and their values, it's a real easy thing when that moment happens because you immediately have something to point to that defines your values as an organization. And what I mean by that is a political issue becomes somebody, comments or an employee targets or whatever, the way you respond then is to say, we as a company are not in a position that we want to we're not taking positions on political issues because we have an employee base of so many different people. But what we do celebrate is they're exercising their voice in the voting booth, enabling people to understand what's going on and empowering them to engage in whatever way they see fit. And that is an incredibly helpful and powerful way to then address a crisis, not if it comes, but when it comes, because every organization is dealing with this in a different way all the time. And so that's a much healthier ethos and a great way to navigate. So, just in terms of practical things you can be doing now.
And then we're going to throw up our contact information. I want to make sure that we leave time, especially because it's honestly a pretty small group. Like, let's leave time for questions. But I do want to end on my part by saying I encourage you to get involved in this way. I feel like for me personally, I've gone from someone, I've got a 3-year-old that I think about constantly in this space and think about the world that he's in and how we're operating as two moms living in Texas, raising him. And I have to say that I am less afraid, I'm less sad, I'm less mad because every day I get to wake up and feel like I'm doing something really meaningful to educate people. So we're hoping that we can do the same for you, give you tools to feel like you're doing something, and that something isn't purely based on anger or, the advocacy work we do for our community is hard. This is different. This feels a little bit I'm not saying that's not important, but I just want to highlight like this is different. This is more hopeful. It's unifying. It's you really are talking to everybody. You really are trying to bridge divides. So just had to kind of throw out like my own personal experience of what it's been like transitioning to this work. And so we've got about 10 minutes left. I'd love to answer questions. Let's use this time.
So if anyone on the call has a question, you can either come off mute and raise your hand, or you can use the chat function and drop it in. We'll give folks a minute there. You know, Marjorie and Deidre, my partner, he takes the League of Women Voters Guide to work and just leaves it in the break room where folks can access the nonpartisan guide for free. And, if people want it, they can have it. But it's like something that he does to try to like help educate some of his colleagues. Little ways like that, people can kind of make a difference and then become known as sort of the person to go to when folks have questions about where to vote or how.
First of all, that's awesome that I mean your partner's already doing like a big step. But it's also not a step that's like not repeatable, right?
Yeah.
It's not something that you're undertaking that's so difficult, but it really does make a difference. I mean, most of the time on, especially when it comes to primaries, people just don't know. They don't know why they're important. They don't know they can participate. Um, Definitely don't know that they decide most of the elections in the state just because our districts lean so heavily to one party or another. And so, yeah, simple things like putting the key dates in your break room or, putting voting guides, as you mentioned, like things like that really do go a long way to improve knowledge and actual participation. Ryan, do you have any tough questions for us?
When someone does think what you're doing is more politically motivated or charged, are there any sort of disarming or sort of helpful ways of sort of saying, look, we're being nonpartisan. We are truly trying to share resources. Because I mean, honestly, I am very partisan in my own personal politics,
Yep.
but I want everyone to participate in democracy equally.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I want to have the same freedom of speech that someone else has and the same access to the ballots that someone else has because I believe in the system. So is
That's a
there anything
great.
you all share that's kind of helps disarm that concept of like partisanship?
So yes, I will say we talk about this a lot, right? Because it really is, I mean, it's the foundation of our organization. I will say you have a little bit of a unicorn in both me and Marjorie. We are two of the only people that are in this space that have worked for both Republicans and Democrats. So us personally, are, proven that we work for and with people of both parties. Our board makeup, we intentionally have people from every political suasion that you can imagine on our board. And then we do a lot of vetting of all of our content, as Marjorie mentioned, from as many diverse perspectives as we absolutely can. Right? Like, I'm not saying that we're perfect, but we make every reasonable attempt to be able to ensure that the content that we're creating, that the messaging that we have doesn't isn't like a red flag for anybody. We and then, on the business side, we are a 501(c)(3). We don't do any advocacy work. We don't, take up causes or anything like that. We are purely educational. And so that's, I mean, we're practicing what we preach, right? We've done it personally. We've got the business side of it locked up, and we'll work across with anyone. We'll work with any organization of any type to ensure that they have this information.
But I think, Ryan, what you just said was actually exactly the advice I would give, which is that, if you want to celebrate the system as designed, the more people engaged with it make for policies and a country more representative of where people are. And I don't always have to agree with where that might be, but I would say I'm heartened by the fact that we are getting as much support for what we are doing, for people who identify on both sides of the aisle, and organizations of every stripe that you can imagine. So this coalition, by the way, includes a lot of business associations, chambers of commerce, et cetera, but it also is including a huge network of faith communities, and all types of faith communities, the YMCA's, for example. So other community type organizations are also stepping in and stepping up to be part of this March Matters effort.
And Ryan, what I'll say is what I know firsthand is that when you're at work, it doesn't matter if you and the people in your meeting room have totally different points of view and political leanings. You have to still come together, set goals, work well, and then come up with ways to solve really challenging problems. And ideally, you're doing that in an environment where you can disagree but still respect each other, right? And I think civics operates on that same principle. And in fact, my hope is that workplaces, because we have the skills of problem solving, negotiation, critical thinking, collaboration, that we can bring a lot of what we do day to day as business leaders and apply that to the civic space. And so, I would argue that it's okay. Like, we're used to doing this already as business people, right? Like, how many people raised their hand when someone made an awkward comment in a meeting? Yes. And also, the business doesn't stop because of that, right? You still have to hit your sales goals and you still have to work on the next brand campaign together or whatever those things are. And so, I'm hoping that by having the lens of do what you do every day at the office and apply it in the community, we could actually, honestly build a better society.
It's a really good point. The skill of like mutual respect and, you know, politics today seem very cantankerous and polarized and whatever, but when we come to the workplace, the goal is to set a lot of that stuff aside so that you can focus on the goal and the missions of the organization or company. So this is a really good skill then to like hone is the ability to talk about things dispassionately, with respect, with yeah, mutual respect for the differences of opinions that might be out there, and how to have conversations about the issues that there's more that we are alike than we are unalike,
Yeah.
as Maya Angelou says, right? So there
Yeah.
may be things that like we may have an R or a D after a name, but like we might all agree on something related to business or schools or the metro system or something, like, not everything is
The
partisan.
cost of World Cup
Um,
tickets, like we were talking
right.
about before the call.
Exactly. And that's where, business, especially for the chamber, is so important is, if someone wants to do business with the LGBT community, we welcome that.
Mhm.
We want our allies, we want LGBT people, anyone that wants to do business with us, we want to build those relationships. And this is just another example of how we can have some of those conversations in nonpartisan ways. I'm not seeing any questions on the chat.
Nailed it, Deirdre. Everybody gets everything. They all get it. Yeah.
But I'm really glad we recorded this because we're going to send this out to other chamber members. And really, we as a chamber will always post on our social media like deadlines to register, deadline to early vote, and always remind folks when it's election day because that's our commitment to as an organization. And we
Well,
all, as
and
this team, will always ask each other like, "Have you early voted yet? Have you early voted yet?"
I'm gonna hold you to it, Ryan. Sign up to for
Use the
the
toolkit.
toolkit.
Yeah.
I
Like
know. Yes.
we'll give you copy and paste content for your newsletters. So
Right. Yeah,
That's
and I
great.
mean, I get it that everybody, especially in business environments, it's a little bit like raising your hand first feels a little scary. So, feel free to reach out to us directly. We can share some of the other companies that are engaged in what we're doing, and anything that makes it easier for you, like we want to do.
Perfect. Well, thank you all again. We will send an email out with the QR code and all the links that you shared so that folks can access that. We'll also, when this is recorded, put it up on the YouTube page with information. So, Marjorie Clifton and Deidre Walsh, thank you so much. We're really appreciative of your support and the In Good Company Institute and the work you're doing across Texas and helping us here in Houston. I do want to just end on a note thanking our Workplace Alliance sponsors, ExxonMobil, HEB, and HP, who've been supporting us throughout the year with programming for these Workplace Alliance events. If your company or business wants to sponsor something, we have our 2026 sponsorship guide is out now and can access it on the Chamber's website. You can host and sponsor a number of events throughout the year. And with that, I will just end by saying, as always, if you have a question for our Workplace Alliance or anything related to our impact partners, please feel free to reach out to me at the chamber. And if you have general chamber questions, you can also email info@houstonlgbtchamber.com for your small business and nonprofit needs. So with that, I'll thank our friends. Is there anything else you wanted to say before we go?
Just thank you. Thanks for showing up.
yeah, we appreciate the work you guys are doing. Thank you.
Thanks, y'all. Have a great day.
Bye.